It's 3 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, and you have to talk about it. There are moments when interventions in the public space are so vile and so grim and so gross and potentially so indicative of much deeper and broader malaises that you have to talk about it. Starving idiots of oxygen, denying attention-seeking superannuated toddlers that the air of publicity is tempting. It is, of course, attractive. But if you do not call it out, ever, if you do not dedicate proper attention to proper description, then it continues. I will be surprised if Jeremy Clarkson faces any meaningful censure for what he did in the Sun newspaper on Saturday. I will be deeply surprised for a number of reasons, and my not negligible knowledge of how this industry works maybe have helped to people on the outside. The main reason why I don't think he'll face censure is because it would involve admitting a mistake, and managements hate nothing more than admitting a mistake. If you drop an enormous clanger, they're much happier to see your contract roll to an undignified end, possibly even suggest that you stop filing your column a couple of months before the contract ends. But the actual axe, the falling of the actual guillotine, is an admission of epic wrongdoing on the part of whoever it was that allowed that column to be printed, or whoever commissioned that column in the first place. When Katie Hopkins wrote her disgusting column about people trying to cross the English Channel, the editorial staff at The Sun were adamant that no one had actually seen it, that it had somehow managed to reach the light of day unchecked. For what it's worth, knowing some of the people involved and some of the processes concerned, I actually believe them. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because they still didn't get rid of her immediately after the column appeared. And Nigel Farage's disgusting comments about, well, it's so hard to remember what disgusting comments it was that temporarily halted his career in toxic attention seeking, which continues, I think, on an obscure television channel. Again, you know, the move is bold when a management actually says enough is enough. We don't want your witterings anymore. That involves some element, not a massive element, but some element of mea culpa. And of course, you saw the editor of The Sun, again, someone I used to know quite well. As you saw the editor of The Sun on BBC One yesterday morning, this is what I found most incredible, oddly, about the whole affair, is that Laura Kuenssberg, the former political editor of the entire BBC, which is the only public broadcaster we have in this country, everything else is owned. The BBC is yours and mine and all of ours. She had the opportunity to ask Rupert Murdoch's editor what the hell was going on when Rupert Murdoch's editor decided to print that column by Jeremy Clarkson, and she didn't mention it at all. I genuinely, out of all of this, and this is me, you'll have to indulge me for 10 seconds. This is me being a little bit in-house, if you like, being a little bit trade, a little bit job. I cannot believe that. I can't even sit here and speculate confidently on how the hell that happened. Whether or not there was a nod and a wink before the programme started, and Victoria said, oh, I won't, well, listen, if you're going to ask me about that, then I'd rather not do the programme. And instead of saying, all right, then, bye-bye, don't let the door hit you on the way out, they said, oh, that's fine, just come in and say, I mean, it's cosy keeping access to a political class that has been bought and sold 100 times over by people like Rupert Murdoch is, you know, probably necessary if you want to end up in a job like that on the BBC. But I, for as long as I live, will never be able to understand how anyone who dares to call themselves a journalist had the actual editor of a newspaper that has just plumbed a new depth. A new depth. How many times have I asked you lately, what do you call it once you've scraped away the bottom of the barrel? What's below that? Well, Jeremy Clarkson, frankly. And for the BBC, the Tribune of the People, the only broadcaster that is not owned by somebody like Rupert Murdoch, to duck that opportunity, to shirk that responsibility, to be derelict of that duty was disgusting. But nowhere near as bad, of course, in the first instance as allowing it to be published in the first place. So why? How? What? Okay. 62-year-old man lies awake at night in bed dreaming about Meghan Markle being made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her. Don't waste tenpence spewing some nonsense about Game of Thrones. If you're trying to defend this, it's because you like it. It's got nothing to do with Game of Thrones. You might need to dress up your own despicable character in television program-shaped clothes, but I'm afraid it doesn't fool me or wash with me for a moment. So put your phone down if you're thinking of wasting tenpence claiming this is some sort of meta-reference to a swords and sorcery program. You know that it isn't, because he concluded everyone who's my age thinks the same way. Anyone reaching for the Game of Thrones excuse this morning clearly does think the same way, but perhaps we should be thankful for this. They're still too ashamed to say so in public. Clarkson isn't. He's one of the highest paid commentators in this country. If you chuck in his TV work with Amazon, he may well be the highest paid journalist in the history of British journalism, which is why he won't be that bothered by this. He certainly won't be facing any jeopardy, any career threat. He will not, like many of us, be wondering if the axe actually falls, how long will I survive for? He's home and dry. He's over the line. He's made up for life. He's also upset his own daughter, who was absolutely adamant. In fact, she stated, "I want to make it very clear that I stand against everything my dad said about Meghan Markle, and I remain standing in support of those who are targeted with online hatred." Again, a neat little observation for you. Absolutely hilarious. Not in a good way, that the kind of people who are adamant that unconscious bias training, unconscious racial bias training is absolutely unnecessary and a load of old woke nonsense are precisely the same people who don't see the fat vein of misogynoir running through every single syllable of Jeremy Clarkson's foul splutterings. And he's managed uniquely, perhaps, to unite almost all corners of the country. Everybody from, right on comedians right through to former Murdoch editors uniting in their disgust and their condemnation of this intervention. Nimco Ali, the chief executive of the Five Foundation, saying a young black woman opens up about her struggle with suicidal thoughts as a result of the abuse she got from the media, and this is how some men in the media react. This is absolutely horrific. Until quite recently, Nimco, I think, was an advisor to Priti Patel or Suella Braverman's Home Office. We live in strange, strange times. But this is gross. This is gross. This is a new level of gross. This is right down there with that Hopkins woman. Right down there. And it's not even necessary. He doesn't. This is the bit. This is why the question I'm going to ask you, possibly on time today, is what's wrong with him? What the flip is wrong with him? Genuinely, what the hell is wrong with a man of that age to come out with this kind of thing about a woman, half his age, regardless of any other extenuating factors? What on earth is wrong with him? In fact, I'll ask you now, 0345 6060973. You know how this programme works. We love to lift bonnets and look underneath and find out what it makes things tick, how things happen, how things work, why things occur, not the simple question of what's your opinion, or I would hope that nobody would stoop as low with a story like this to try and claim it's a case of two sides, a Donald Trumpian discussion about excellent people on both sides. It's downright disgusting. It's inexcusable, and for me at least at the moment it's inexplicable, because career-wise it's utterly unnecessary. I won't dwell on this unduly, but I want you to understand all of the framework behind the question that I'm asking you. Career-wise, he's not like the Hopkins person. He doesn't have to desperately seek new levels of outrage. He's not running some grift where he sets up a PayPal account or a Patreon, whatever they're called, and then the viler he is, the more he claims that he's a victim of free speech censorship and you send him money so that he can carry on avoiding a proper job. The man's as rich as Croesus. He's absolutely loaded. And until this weekend, I would have added at that point, and good luck to him. He's turned a relatively hackneyed little trick into a global brand. I enjoyed Top Gear when he presented it. There was something laddish and bantersome and enjoyable about the interplay between those three presenters, and it's business genius on somebody's part to have turned it into such a global brand. And again, back to the BBC, to have leapt from the national broadcaster onto the Amazon platform with, sacks of cash. So I do think that's relevant. Now, I do look at some of these people dancing for their supper and being increasingly and performatively disgusting. And I think, well, crikey, your kids need shoes, but particularly when it's someone you used to know and quite like, and you see them tarting around on these dreadful new TV channels, and you sort of think, God, is it really that bad? Have things really got that bad for you? And this is the only work you can get? That you've got to come out with this?